we come to this sacred place, made more sacred in this moment by the presence and attention of each and every one of us. I invite those who are here in the sanctuary to wave at folks at home attending on the live stream, and I give a special wave to our guest preacher who is also attending virtually. Welcome all. And now if you are in the sanctuary, let's take a moment to turn and greet one another. Welcome to worship with the Winchester Unitarian Society. Whatever faiths you have known or the flags of your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, whether you rolled in here today or walked in or logged on, no matter the hope in your heart or money in your account, we seek to fully welcome each and all to this sacred time and sacred space. For those seeking a place to grow in spirit, where questions are welcome. For those striving to find their place in the healing of our world, welcome home. I am the Reverend Heather Janulis, and it's my honor to serve the Winchester Unitarian Society as the parish minister. Before our service continues, I ask that you pay attention to these brief announcements. Our wonderful tech deck depends on the Wi-Fi for the live stream. So if you have a cell phone on you, please turn it off. Even if it's silent, please turn it off. The concert series will hold its first concert on November 5th. So the music committee is collecting sponsorships. If you have any questions or if you have your checkbook, you can see Jack McCreelis. Jack, please raise your hand. On the terrace after worship. Next Sunday is a Bring a Friend Sunday, focused on the spirituality of mending and making do. There is space for more in the sanctuary, and you can bring friends along via the live stream. Spread the word. We will hold a memorial service for Sam Berlinger III next Sunday, October 17th at 3 p.m. A link to register for physical spaces in the sanctuary will be published in this week's highlights. Please also note the service for Vern Blodgett on October 24th at 2. The Racial Justice Planning Group continues exploration of the UUA's Widening the Circle of Concern report with a virtual workshop on governance, how we make decisions and get things done, on Tuesday, October 19th. How does the need to advance our anti-racism work show up in our decision-making systems? Look to our newsletter highlights to register by next Sunday. And a few words about today's guest speaker. When I was a student at Hampshire College in the early 90s, C.B. Beale was a residential advisor, and for many of us, an important leader in the campus community. This was a time in my life when being part of a safe and welcoming community was essential and life-giving. As I think back on it, CB's presence and contributions in particular helped make my college environment as personally transformative as it was. After I found Unitarian Universalism, it did not surprise me to learn that CB is a leader in this faith. So many congregations have benefited from the wisdom, courage, and care I found in CB's leadership so many years ago. In CB's words, they are a consultant, educator, and storyteller based in Western Massachusetts. They were the 2019 recipient of the Unitarian Universalist Association's Angus MacLean Award for Excellence in Religious Education. CB will be joining us virtually, beginning with the first reflection, and is tuning in with us now. Hello, CB. Let us now open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship with these words by Donna Markova. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live, so that which comes to me as seed goes on to the next as blossom, and that which comes to me as blossom goes on as fruit. I invite Sheila Puffer to come forward, who will kindle our chalice with these words, drawing on the words we just heard from Donna Markova. For all of us, vulnerable to living lives not our own, seeking courage to fully live our truths, companions to others in the same ancient struggle, we kindle this light, a symbol and a sign of the fragile yet powerful flame of true self, burning within every human heart. Let us now rise in body or in spirit to join in singing, "Gather the Spirit." I invite us into a time of centering, first through words and then through a ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle here in the sanctuary or at home to signify a joy or sorrow you hold within. For those who are gathering here in the sanctuary, please be sure to keep some space between you as you line up at the table. At that time, if you would like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. After we kindle the light, we will be together in a time of shared silence. We begin with words of meditation by James Baldwin. For nothing is fixed. Forever and forever and forever, it is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born. And we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us, and the light goes out. Now, let us kindle the light. It is my honor to welcome into our virtual pulpit C.B. Beale, who will lead the first reflection.
Good morning. It is such a pleasure to be among you this morning. Today, I'm going to tell a story that was originally penned by Kyle McClear. Now, because it was a picture book, I'll tell you that the characters in the story are a spork, its parents, the fork and the spoon, see what I did there? Yeah. And various other cutlery. Later in the story, a toddler comes upon the scene quite suddenly. Spork was neither spoon nor fork, but a bit of both and also neither. Spork had two parents who both thought that Spork was perfectly sporky, but Spork stuck out. In the kitchen, forks were forks and spoons were spoons. Cutlery customs were closely followed, and mixing was uncommon. The forks and the spoons knew who they were and what they were for. Now, naturally, there were rule breakers. Knives who loved chopsticks and tongs who married forks, but such families were unusual. Spork spent most of their time tucked in the bottom corner of the back drawer in the kitchen. You know the drawer, the one with the 5 corn-on-the-cob forks and the 3 plastic straws, and that old can opener that sticks that's kept around for when the good can opener has gone missing. When Spork came out of the drawer to sit on the countertop, the other utensils would say hi and move on, forget they had met Spork many times before, ignore Spork completely, or ask intrusive questions. One day, after the billionth time, Spork was asked, "Have you been coming here long?" And what are you anyway? And has your body always been like that? And after the zillionth time Spork was passed over when the table was being set, Spork sighed and thought it must be easier to be just a single thing. And Spork decided to pick one single thing to be. Spork thought to start by fixing their head. And so Spork put on a bowler hat to look more spoonish, but the forks thought that Spork was too round. Then Spork made a paper crown to look more forkish, but the spoons thought that Spork was too pointy. Spork wondered if there were other lonely creatures out there with no matching kind, who never got chosen to be at the table, who didn't really belong. They wondered if there was an egg beater rolling pin, or a garlic press ice cream scoop, or a spatula teapot. But Spork never met them. At dinner time, Spork watched from the counter while the spoons played pea hockey and skillfully balanced boiled eggs. Spork sat off to the side while the forks raked patterns in the mashed potatoes and twirled noodles around in complicated circles like rhythmic gymnastics. At the end of this and every other meal, Spork looked on while the others enjoyed a fabulous dip in the pool. There were even bubbles and a spongy massage. Spork was there, watching from the counter, then shuffled back to their drawer. Then one day, a messy thing arrived. Now, this messy thing had obviously never heard of cutlery customs or table manners. It's had its way with the spaghetti. It giggled to see the peas bounce and spread across the floor in great patterns of escape. No cutlery customs at all. This messy thing smeared and spilled and flung and clumped and dripped without a care. "Wait," said the forks, but the messy thing did not wait. "Fling! Oh, careful," said the spoons, but the messy thing was not careful. "Smear! Oh, help," said the forks, while the messy thing continued to slop and splatter. "Quick," said the spoons. They didn't know what to do with the messy thing. Now, a fork may be good for poking and picking, And a spoon may be fine for scooping and stirring, but this messy thing with its slurpy and clumpy, half-finished food bits needed something else. Something that could do all sorts of things at once. Something flexible and easy to hold. Something that was neither spoon nor fork, but a bit of both and also neither. The utensils looked around, and they saw Spork. And they gasped and immediately felt a mixture of excitement and relief and some embarrassment. And that is when Spork leapt off the countertop over the cutlery drawer and landed on the high chair. Doo-doo-doo! The messy thing saw Spork and immediately stopped. Its eyes got big. It gurgled its curiosity. It grabbed Spork and held Spork motionless. It tapped Spork up and down and let out a cheerful. It waggled Spork around. It was so happy. And that is the story of how Spork finally and happily found their way to the table. And the cutlery, having realized the mistake was theirs all along, immediately had a meeting and voted unanimously to dismantle and completely reconstruct the kitchen and the kitchen drawers. They asked Spork what Spork needed and others. They listened. They bore witness to lives they had previously not understood or even noticed. In the end, there was space for Spork in a proper space for the 5 corn-on-the-cob forks and the 3 plastic straws and that old can opener that sticks. They built new spaces that would properly fit the egg beater rolling pin, the garlic press ice cream scoop, and the spatula teapot. They learned about Spork, and they started to notice when they were unfriendly. They started interrupting each other if someone asked an intrusive or rude question. They stopped asking Spork and their friends to prove their experience, and they just started learning about their experience. And as they did these things, they learned more about themselves than what they thought they already knew. Why, they found out there was a whole subgroup of forks and spoons that really would rather play board games than spend so much time in the pool. Yep. And there were some knives that wanted to hang out in the garage with the hatchets. They had been so busy thinking that they knew who they were. It hadn't occurred to them that they were already so many things at one time. When they finally finished the kitchen remodel, they left a couple of empty spaces too. Spaces that were constructed with flexibility for whomever came next. The table was for all, and so the organization had to be as well. And they all agreed that Spork was perfectly sporky, just a little bit round, just a little bit pointy, just right. Thanks for listening to my story.
I'm not a stranger to the
the sand, the flood, gonna drown him out. This is for Ray, this is for Bruce, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me.
I want to invite you to take a breath for a moment. Feel your seat in your seat. Feel your feelings. Notice them. Give them names. It can be said that Unitarians are a particularly wordy people. And in fairness, look what I do for a living. We spend a lot of time talking about what we think is true. We think about something, decide what's right, and take positions on things. None of that was what Spork needed. As much as we UUs love to think, talk, argue, and search for truth and meaning, these activities do not build trust. They might build knowledge or awareness. They might build the kind of connection that comes from striving together with common purpose. But talking about ideas does not build trust. Talking about our lives and having our truth received and held dear, that does. Trust is not a cognitive brain-based experience. It's primarily emotional. And if we are part of a religious tradition that prides itself in and even sometimes prioritizes thinking, we have to work all the harder to build trust. Spork had no reason to trust the utensils that were in charge, not simply because they ignored Spork, but also because they did not know or care about Spork's life. They did not know or care to make space for Spork, to find out what Spork was like or what they needed or what they cared about. So Spork had no feeling of connection, of care or trust with them. But then, in reconstructing the kitchen, the other utensils spoke with Spork and learned about Spork's life and the lives of others who were like Spork or different from both Spork and themselves. They started following people like Spork on social media and reading books. They didn't just see a problem with the drawers and build a new one that was bigger, but just the same. They connected with Spork in a way that meant that later on, they wouldn't ignore Spork in another situation. They would know Spork deeply and be in trusting relationship. And Spork could trust them because they had made themselves trustworthy. They restructured things by changing their perspective, their behavior, and their environment. Now, in congregational life with discussions about funding and polity and the next social justice project, we spend a lot of time searching for what is right, what is best. When we're striving to be right, we're living in our cognitive brain competing for rightness, and it becomes a battle. And battles are not beloved community. Now, in the right circumstances, this competing for rightness, this battle is necessary. We battle systemic racial oppression. We battle patriarchal and homophobic laws about policing people's bodies. We battle police misconduct and encroaching national fascism. And if arguing and battling is our most common way of interacting, it interferes in our beloved community. Bearing witness is different. When we bear witness to people, we must consistently notice and then set aside our thoughts and assumptions. The things that don't make sense to us because we don't yet have the other's whole picture. We must recognize when what we are bearing witness to is so different from our own experience that we have to take care not to dismiss it out of hand. When we bear witness, we prioritize the story someone else wishes to tell over the questions that we have, where we would like their story to go, and how we mentally fill in the gaps in the story they did. We return again and again with our attention to the story they are telling us. And we set aside again and again our own assumptions. When we can still our minds and be present with someone, it is then we're able to express meaningful empathy. We can make space to say, wow, that must have been hard. Or, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that happened. You did not deserve that. Or, that is amazing. I am honored that you told me. Thank you. When we tell the stories of our lives, people have the opportunity to hold space for the unveiling of more of us. And I don't mean here just chit chat about our kids' recital or a ski trip or humble bragging about a promotion, although those have important social places in our interactions, but the more meaningful stories. Stories of our struggle for survival, our curiosity about who we are and why we do what we do. When we share things that are deeply meaningful to us, our perspective and our experience, and then we find that the listener has received it and believed us, we will find that person trustworthy. But we so often don't experience that, do we? We all too often experience people trying to fix us or our situation, or worse, they tell us our experience is wrong. And it's all too often we who try to fix things for others. When I was a kid, I only knew about two genders, girl and boy. And I had two choices within girl or failed girl. Just as with boy, there was boy or failed boy. Where I lived, they called a failed girl a tomboy, and they called a failed boy a sissy or a fairy. People policed what a girl or a boy was. As I got older, I worked hard for words to describe my gender. I'm a masculine of center person. I'm a womanish type person. I'm a tomboy farm girl. I'm a farm girl tomboy. Finally, and for a long time, I strung together a long list of words to try to approximate my gender. I said, I'm a butch, queer, tomboy, farm girl, masculine of center, womanish type person. It was a lot. Now, in the decades, many decades since I was that child, we've developed better understanding, knowledge, and language. And there is now a much simpler word for my gender. I'm non-binary, a gender that does not fall into the Western cultural idea of man and woman as opposites. I'm trans, meaning across from the gender people expect me to have as a person in a body called female. Not a man, not a woman, sort of both and also neither. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. There's a term called gaslighting you might be familiar with. It means to manipulate someone into questioning their sanity. It comes from a play and a movie of the same name. And in that movie, an abusive husband attempted to make his wife think that she was mentally unwell, to question her own sanity and her perceptions by, among other things, adjusting the lighting, which was a gas lamp, adjusting it downward. And when she would say, it's dark in here, he would say, no, it's not. And this was repeated and repeated until finally he was pretending to read the newspaper in the pitch dark while she said, it's dark in here. And he said, no, it's not. The goal of gaslighting is to get someone to disbelieve their own perception of reality and replace it with someone else's. It's not to discuss or persuade someone to think differently. We do that all the time, and that's appropriate. But to manipulate them into not trusting their own thinking, their own experiences. This happens all too often in both our personal and religious lives. People who are like Spork, people who do not experience their gender in some different way than broader society tells them they're supposed to, These people are gaslit in our society every day. People say, there's no such thing as trans. There's no such thing as non-binary. And the reasoning usually boils down to some version of, because I'm not non-binary and it doesn't make sense to me, so I don't believe you. Those of us who are survivors of dysfunctional families and abuse, or of illnesses like fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue that other people told us we didn't have, we have experienced being surrounded by people who tell us we are wrong or broken. Those of us who were told that we were bad and lazy when it turned out we were just neurodiverse, but no one knew what it was back then. We have experienced people tell us our perceptions of our experience are not valid because they differ from other people's. So it must all be in our head, made up. Some version of, I don't have that, I've never heard of that, I don't believe you. And then this is even more broadly true for those of us who are survivors of and live with pervasive sexism, racism, homophobia, and ableism. I've never seen that oppression like you described. It's not that bad. I don't believe you. And I have to admit, I have been on both sides of this. I've been both the person whose reality is challenged by someone else whose reality is different and refuses to bear witness to me. And I've been the person who uses my own reality to judge others. Sometimes have me back and I'll share some of the ways that I am my very own cautionary tale. But for right now, this. I come from about 400 years of Puritan New Englanders. I come from people with names like Harbot Grimscottle. And regardless of your personal family history, if you're you are deeply bound up in this history as well. I come from generations of people who, when someone dies, says, well, that's too bad, got to get on with it. I come from people for whom grieving is private and internal and set aside as quickly as possible, and empathy is shaken off. Feelings are meant to be things that flash past, darting like birds that never land, and our own judgment is most likely right. We are raised to believe that we always know best. Yet, I grew up knowing only 3 feeling words: mad, sad, and what was the other one again? Oh yeah, mad. Now, personally, I think that this also means that since I come from a long line of people who, because we're never taught what it is to deeply experience what we're experiencing, our Puritan roots in our family cultures lead us sometimes even to gaslight ourselves. We were never helped to find words for our gender. We were never supported to fully experience grief or other big emotions. So much of our whole culture prioritizes what we should be and how we should be and what we should feel over learning who we actually are. And if we weren't taught how to notice and honor and bear our own feelings and experiences, whether it's grief or gender or otherwise, how on earth could we possibly bear witness to others? How could we express meaningful empathy? So many of us were never taught how to sit with other people's feelings, with their stories. Now, some of us, realizing that what our families had taught us about life was less helpful than they'd thought, or that our coping mechanisms that kept the feelings at bay had accidentally turned into drug or alcohol problem. We joined support groups or recovery groups. Others of us joined covenant groups and small group ministry. We may have been flummoxed when we first entered those rooms and found people just sat quietly listening while someone else talked, why they just rambled on and on. I started out being judgmental of other people, taking up so much time talking to themselves. Oh my goodness, what an ego-driven thing, I thought. Wow. It sure is all about me in here. I had been taught that anything about me was too much. Now, others of us took to it like fish to water, Finally, I can talk without being interrupted, corrected, or scolded. But over time, I realized that this is how humans grow, connect, and develop trust in relationship. This is a core part of being beloved community. We learn to listen deeply, and we learn that other people will listen to us deeply, will let us share at our own pace, believe what we say about our experience, and care for us even when it's hard for us to care for ourselves. For some of us, this is the absolute opposite of how we grew up. We're learning to notice and tell our truth and learning to bear witness to others at the same time and sometimes quite late in life. Now, so why is this important for gender nonconforming, trans, and non-binary folks? Because most of us weren't heard as children. We weren't given language or support. Our gender was policed. We couldn't explore and learn how to authentically be ourselves. And you too, cisgender people. Even among cisgender people, there are different experiences of how we are gendered, how people are masculine or feminine. Most cisgender people have had experiences as children that were laden with messages about how we were too much or not enough certain aspects of our gender. Too feminine, not feminine enough. Too masculine, not masculine enough. So many messages. This society has such rigid standards of what a woman and a man are supposed to be. It is not only trans people who are punished for moving away from that standard. And I believe it is important for the liberation of all of us that we are all able to think carefully and reflectively about gender. To reflect on what is a belief we hold and why we hold it, and then to hold it up to the emerging consensus to find out if it's true broadly, to find out if the way we are holding ideas about gender is harming others. And even those of us who've been harmed by friends or family for our failure to perform gender the way someone thought we were supposed to, who are called names or bullied, it's also vital that we recognize that transgender and non-binary people are called names and bullied by individual peoples and families, but also are marginalized and oppressed by the systems of education, economics, law, and even church. I am grateful that people get to grow and change, even those of us who were raised Puritan. I believe in the power of naming ourselves, of claiming our identity, even if learning how is difficult. This today is an invitation to bear witness as an ongoing spiritual practice, to lean into presence as a spiritual practice. In small group ministry and covenant groups, recovery or therapy groups, we learned to just listen. We suspend judgment, notice and dismiss, or check out our assumptions. Well, after we've been doing it a while, we find ourselves doing it elsewhere, everywhere, bearing witness to people. We start noticing and resisting the impulse to be right immediately, or to tell someone what to do, or to fix it for them so we don't have to have uncomfortable feelings. Resisting the impulse to do anything that would move this feeling away from us. Well, we bore witness to friends, we bore witness to colleagues, we sat and held space for people after tragedy. We learned to be with someone's feelings without taking them in, to be empathetic and present without drowning in emotion. Next thing you know, we're bearing witness willy-nilly all over the place. In the supermarket just before the beginning of the pandemic, I was doing a big stock up on staples. There was a man in his mid-80s, the age of my parents, with that bent and gnarled but stalwart, determined posture, who was confused in the soup aisle. There's a lot of soup in the soup aisle. I paused and said, "Are you okay? Can I help?" And he asked me if I knew where the mushroom soup was. I said, "Well, there's a lot of different brands. Do you know which one you want?" And he told me that he didn't really know. His wife had always cooked, and he didn't know what to get now that she'd died. I stood there for 10 minutes and I listened to him talk about his wife and her cooking and how confusing the grocery store is and how he regretted never going with her to shop. It had always been his wife's job. In the end, we identified that she made really creamy mushroom soup, and I helped him choose two to try. But mushroom soup wasn't what he needed that day. He had to buy it, sure, but what he needed was for someone to see him, to bear witness to a way his life had completely changed, to how he was bereft and didn't know how he would continue to move forward. It was an honor to stand with him there in that aisle. Willy-nilly, I tell you. When we are present, just present with someone, we open ourselves and them up to possibilities. When we try not to control the outcome, but to just let it happen, miracles of connection, of trust will happen. And what happens is nothing like what we expect and so much more beautiful. Amen. Blessed be. May it be so, because we make it so.
Thank you, CB. That was a tremendous gift. When we contribute to the offering, we support not only this congregation, but its mission. And as it is our practice to share the gifts placed in our offering plate with organizations living out Unitarian Universalist values, giving to the offering further amplifies our collective vision. This morning, we share our gifts with Planned Parenthood Massachusetts, protecting and promoting sexual and reproductive health and freedom of choice by providing clinical services, education, and advocacy. Their vision is that sexual health is essential to every person's well-being. Those attending via the live stream will soon see information about how to donate. Those here in the sanctuary are also welcome to donate electronically. You can find more information in your order of service. If you are visiting for the first time, we invite you to be our guest. The most valuable thing you can offer is your completed visitor information card, so we can stay connected beyond this Sunday. Those in the sanctuary may find blank cards in the pew rack in front of you, and you can put your completed card in the plate. Information displayed on the live stream about electronic giving also includes the URL for the virtual visitor card. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so, please join me in reading together the Affirmation of Shared Ministry, printed in your order of service. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build the beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. We close our time together with these words. May you be brave enough to expose your aching woundedness and reveal your vulnerability. May you speak your deepest truths, knowing they will change as you do. May you sing the music within you, composing your own melody, playing your song with all your heart. May you love even though your heart breaks again and again. And until the end of your days, may life be filled with possibilities and courage. Go in peace. Amen. Please join me in reciting the words printed in your order of service for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This service has ended, but our life of service continues. Those who are on the live stream, we encourage you to join virtual social hour, and here in the sanctuary, please join us on the terrace for coffee hour.